In tonight's Government Insider, addressing port cybersecurity. In the U.S., these shipping ports handle trillions of dollars in cargo each year, and one disruption could throw the entire economy into disarray. What are agencies doing to protect this critical infrastructure from cyber threats? For answers, we turn to our next guest tonight on Capitol Insider, Gregory Wilshusen, Director of Information Security Issues at the Government Accountability Office. Greg, cybersecurity is quickly becoming a major part of protecting critical infrastructure. How could a hack attack damage maritime port activity? You know, in the past we've talked about a dirty bomb, nuclear devices. Now we're talking about cybersecurity at our ports. What could happen?
Well, several things, Morris. One of which is that information systems, including industrial control systems, terminal operations systems, control all aspects of the movement of cargo through a port. So a disruption or a computer intrusion into those systems could have a debilitating effect on the ability of that port to transit and offload and move, for example, oil, gas, and other cargo. Also, intrusions could also be used to either promote or hide the theft of valuable cargo.
Now, are the nation's ports vulnerable to cyber attacks? Is this a high-level threat?
Yes, the threat is present and the threat is real, Morris. In fact, incidents have already occurred, including one in which a computer intrusion promoted a drug smuggling operation at one port. Wow. And also that an unmanned port, in the service of that unmanned, I should say, crane, was disabled when the GPS signals which controlled it were disrupted.
Now, in June 2014, the GAO did a review of the steps that the Department of Homeland Security had taken to reduce cyber threats. What were your findings, Greg?
Well, we noted that the Department of Homeland Security and other stakeholders had taken really very limited steps to address the cybersecurity risk. For example, the Coast Guard, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security and has responsibility for different aspects of port security, did not include cybersecurity in its biennial risk assessment for the maritime environment. In addition, the security plans that we reviewed for different ports and facilities at those ports did not address cybersecurity in any meaningful way. And now on the plus side, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, identified enhancing cybersecurity at ports as a priority area for its Port Security Grant Program. However, it didn't consult with cybersecurity experts, and as a result, there was increased risk that grants that were awarded were not going to provide the most effective impact on cybersecurity.
All right, more of what you're saying. Let's fast forward to a year later. Has DHS made any improvements other than what you've talked about in protecting ports from cyber criminals?
Well, they have made a couple of improvements, one of which is that in their most recent biennial risk assessment, they did address cyber threats, but they didn't really address the vulnerabilities of the ports to those threats, and that's something that remains to be done. In addition, the Coast Guard, for the first time, issued and developed a cybersecurity strategy for the maritime environment, and that's a positive step.
How about other agencies? Do you want to see other people involved?
Well, I think certainly the private sector owners and operators of the port facilities need to be more actively involved, particularly with sharing information about the cyber threats and incidents and vulnerabilities that they have among each other so they can learn from each other and take steps to mitigate these risks. And we found that that hasn't been happening. And in fact, at a hearing last year, a Port Authority official mentioned that private sector owners are sometimes hesitant to share information because of competitive concerns.
Just within the past year, a major West Coast port had a shutdown for a while because of union issues, worker issues and everything. Had a rippling effect within the economy here and overseas. Major companies not getting their products to market or receiving them. I can only imagine the damage done if there were some kind of a cyber attack. It would have the same effect, if not worse.
Yes, it could very well if it disrupts the operations, not only at one port, but if it's a coordinated attack, it may affect the operations at multiple ports.
And as I said off the top, we always think of ports being vulnerable to bombs, small nuclear devices, things that are being smuggled in, never mind drugs, but things that could damage our infrastructure. And yet cybersecurity has been an issue all along, and finally we're giving it its due.
Indeed.
All right, Gregory Wilshusen, Director of Information Security Issues from the GAO. Thanks again, Greg.
Thank you, Morris.